meditation night. This night where we are, well, we're just exploring meditation, as I say, particularly on this theme and how it can change your life, and therefore why it's worth sticking with through the ups and downs, the boredom sometimes of any individual practice. My name's Arthasiddhi, so I'm part of the team here with Liz and Vidyasaki. We're a small team at the moment, but we may be growing shortly. And tonight we're looking at the theme of ethical happiness. So what we're getting at here is, putting those two words together, is that it can seem not infrequently that ethics and happiness are in conflict. There's that phrase, it's a Christian phrase, isn't it, which I usually don't quite remember, but that which I should, I do not, and that which I do, I should not, or something like that. That's often the territory we sort of find ourselves in at some level. And it's there in the world, isn't it? It's there at the sort of macro level. It's a bit of a sort of embarrassing time for us as a human race, isn't it? The sort of planetary manifestation of the sort of story of happiness that we have, that we actually sort of need more and more things in order to be happy. Basically, that sort of story is sort of running us into trouble at a planetary level. And of course, that macro is really only the expression of the micro, of the mind, individual minds, and the sort of habits of those individual minds. Often it's hard to see that, isn't it? It's hard to see that in some way we are sort of participating in that. It can be hard to know how not to participate in that, actually, even if just passively. But yeah, often happiness and ethics can seem at some level in conflict. And I want to talk about the metta bhavana as the discovery of the solution to that, or at least part of it, part of the solution. So broadly speaking, you could talk about two approaches to happiness. One is to try and arrange life so that it conforms with our desires. The other is to try and transform our desires so that they are more in alignment with how things actually are. The second of these, transforming our desires, is hard. That's what we're doing in the metta bhavana. It's not easy. It's not an easy path, but it is possible. Whereas the first is not possible. It's ultimately not possible for us to arrange life to conform with our desires. It's so tempting, isn't it? It seems possible. Its promise is possible, but it keeps letting us down. So, I want to talk about the metta bhavana as a sort of slow. This is the way I've experienced it, really, a sort of slow discovery, a sort of practice of kind of slow discovery, actually, that I believe in the first, that I sort of invest energy, my energy in the first. I invest my energy in trying to arrange life, people, the world, reality, to conform with my desires. So that's one of the things that I sort of repeatedly see in the metta bhavana. I guess this is kind of once I've got over the sort of pump it up sort of version of approach to metta bhavana, whereby you just try and pump up positive feelings, which kind of seems to work for a bit, and then you just feel a bit exhausted and don't know what to do next. So yeah, that's not a particularly sustainable or effective way of engaging. But if we continue to engage, we start to learn how we're engaging. We start to see the patterns, and we start to see that actually we're investing. Certainly, what I've seen, we're investing in this first approach to happiness, trying to arrange life to accord with our desires. So that's one of the things that you will discover in the Metta Bhavana, kind of how you do this, a sort of slow discovery of how you do this. And the second discovery in the Metta Bhavana, not exclusively in your life, is that it doesn't work, that approach doesn't work. And I say this still discovering that. It's a sort of repeated discovery because I keep forgetting it. Basically, it's a habit to invest in that sort of way. So that's really the value of regular meditation practice. In a way, regular meditation practice is it's as much a sort of reminder as it is a transformation in itself. Perhaps I'll say a bit more about that in a moment. So the way we actually discover this is at the same time in the experience of metta. So in the experience of metta, you discover that actually life is better through with the attitude of metta, when approached with the attitude of metta. We can't entirely convince ourselves out of the first approach to happiness unless there's a genuine alternative. And actually, perhaps this is a bit sort of sobering to consider, but I've certainly found that it's true with me, only if it's a happier alternative. It sort of needs to be a sustainable and therefore sort of happy alternative. So it's in a moment of metta, it's in the sort of emergence of metta that we realise, life could be better this way. And so that is as much the discovery. It's in this kind of this moment of discovering that metta is a possibility in a particular relationship with someone else, and that actually it's better. It's a happier. It's ethical happiness. It's a happier sort of experience than what we're currently doing. And in that moment, you can sort of you have some purchase to sort of release your investment, release your grip on this first approach of trying to arrange things to accord with your desires. So just a last thing, I'll give an example of this. But as I said, I just suddenly lost my train of thought. As I was saying, the repeated practice is it's a repeated reminder of this. We kind of repeatedly need to see, there's this other possibility, and actually it's better. It's a happier possibility. It's a more fulfilling, more satisfying possibility. We sort of need to be repeatedly reminded of that because we habitually slip off. I talk of myself. I'm just sort of habitually going back in a way through more and more meditation. You just see this more and more fully, how habitually we invest in this arranging life to conform with our desires. So that's as much as the transformative effect of meditation. Just remembering that metta is another possibility is of value and part of the value of doing the practice every day. So one reason why we do believe, we sort of up here we can think, no, that's probably not going to work. Just trying to arrange life to conform with my desires. We probably can see that up here. But one of the reasons why we do believe in it is because we don't explore our experience very thoroughly. So that's the way I'm going to talk about this is a particular approach in the metta practice. It's a particular, not just approach, sort of aspect of what we're doing in the metta practice. We're going to explore our experience more thoroughly. Often what we do is we just notice, that person does that thing that I don't like. and we sort of want to move away. We may not be fully conscious of that, but that's what we do. Or that person does that thing that I like. I want to spend more time with them. But we don't explore the experience much more than that, all too often. So what we can do in the metta bhavana is bring more awareness into our experience. So really, one of the keys to metta is awareness. It's an example of how the metta and the mindfulness are two wings of meditation. They support each other. So I'll talk about this in terms of kind of working in the fifth stage. So in the fifth stage, you'll remember with the metta practice, we start by bringing to mind all four people from the previous stages and trying to equalize the metta. So I want to talk about how we do that, or how I'm doing that actually, how I'm approaching equalizing the metta. We just say, try and equalize the metta, and then expand it out. But how do you do that? How do you actually kind of approach that? So I'm going to talk a bit about this. And but first, I'll talk about an example actually of sort of exploring how in the metta we can explore our experience more fully. This is what I was doing in the fifth stage this morning, actually. So I was bringing to mind, in some ways, this can be most tangible with the person we find difficult. It can really sort of bring the mind into focus because we're slightly uncomfortable. So I was bringing to mind someone who I just feel a bit uncomfortable with. I mean, I kind of like them, but I feel a bit uncomfortable with them as well. And I realised, I became aware that I feel uncomfortable. Actually, I was kind of largely aware of this before, but I am uncomfortable with them because they're a bit stuck with something in a particular way, a bit sort of struggling with something. And I feel sort of pained, actually, to see them sort of stuck and struggling. So I find that sort of a bit uncomfortable. But then when I looked a bit more at what's going on for me in relation to that, actually, it's kind of subtly kind of how do you put it? Sort of infected with this first story. How can I arrange life so that it conforms with my desires? I'm subtly kind of wanting to help him, to sort of change him, because I find it uncomfortable seeing him struggle. Do you see what I mean? So it's interesting how even in our sort of helpful impulses, there can be subtly this first story sort of infiltrating or involved. So yes, I noticed that, and so I was exploring further. What does that actually sort of feel like? What does this sort of way of relating to him feel like? And it feels it's uncomfortable seeing somebody struggle, seeing someone suffer in some way. But what about the sort of internal mental state of, in some ways, trying to sort of hold that at arm's distance, trying to sort of change him to sort of move that kind of discomfort away from me? It's very embarrassing, really, isn't it? But this is a practice of meditation. Well, actually, it's kind of subtly pervaded with anxiety, because there's this kind of sense of kind of trying to control something outside of me, which you're never quite sure it's going to work. So there's this kind of subtle anxiety as to whether I'm going to manage to change it. Oh no, I don't think it's changing. And so there's all this sort of subtle anxiety, or perhaps not so subtle, but anxiety mix in there. So the actual experience of the mental state itself is unpleasant. So I'm adding that to the bit of discomfort that I can't change. That's not to do with me. But then more than that, how does that manifest in terms of a dynamic, the communication dynamic between us? Well, I think actually in some way he sort of picks up are sort of holding him at bay. So that affects the sort of ease in the relationship and the certain sense of kind of trust, I suppose. And that is kind of not very pleasant, satisfactory. I'm not very sort of happy with that. So this was kind of me. This is only happening in a few moments in the meditation, but to explain it takes a bit longer. So it's just an example of how you can kind of, in the metta bhavana, we can be actually noticing what is the experience, a bit more thoroughly of how I'm relating to this person. And is it kind of, what does it feel like? And then also another question we can bring in is, how do I feel about this? Because actually I feel a bit sort of not very happy with myself, actually, not sort of self-critical in an unhelpful way, but I feel like actually I don't want to be relating in that sort of way, and don't have to be either. I feel like I can relate in a different way, in a more satisfying way. I'd like actually to help him, actually be helpful rather than just help him to get myself out of trouble. So yeah, a little example of how we can work. So I'll lead us through this in the practice, how we can kind of work in the practice. So what I'm going to suggest we do is, in the first, second, third, fourth stage of the practice, we don't do too much cultivation. We mainly just try and become aware of our actual responses, our actual experience of the person, and our responses, our immediate responses. We're not going to do too much kind of pumping up metta. And then when we get to the fifth stage, we're going to start to notice how our response is different between these different people. And then we'll start to sort of see if we can explore further how do we feel about that, in order that we can perhaps discover a more ethical happiness, actually. So that's what we're going to do before expanding out. So if you'd like to get onto your cushions. And when you're ready, closing your eyes in this practice of the metta bhavana. We're trying to discover the possibility of metta through becoming more aware of our experience of how we relate to people. So starting just by letting your mind settle into your experience, a bit like something gently floating down through water, letting the mind settle into the physical sensations of the body. And as you do this, starting to become aware of the mind, any thoughts, and the sort of weather of your thoughts, gusty, torrential, or quite calm. All the while letting the mind settle into your experience and noticing the mood of the mind, just in the broad brush strokes of whether you're a bit closed down at the moment, a bit flat, or whether you're quite open and buoyant. And then feeling the sensations in the heart center as the chest rises and falls. So attending to the heart center, by which I mean roughly the center of the chest, beneath the skin, just seeing what sort of sensations are there. And not worrying if there's not much there. That's absolutely fine. We need to be able to stay with not much happening in order to reach the deeper response of metta, for example. So just staying with the sensations in the chest, the belly, and having this open, curious attitude to what we're learning about what's going on in our mind. And now bring into mind a good friend, as someone who you appreciate and you have some sense they appreciate you too. And all the while attending to the heart center, or if it's more alive for you, the belly, or a combination of both. And don't worry if you can't get a very strong sense of your friend. Give it time. You can become aware that they too are having this same experience right now of breathing. You can be sure of that. As you breathe, they too somewhere are breathing. And we're not particularly going to try and make something happen, just attend to our experience of being in the presence of our good friend, noticing what's happening in the heart center, however faint, and if it's not very much, not losing heart, staying open. This is the practice. If we can't stay with neutral sensation, we won't reach deeper responses. As our friend breathes, breathing, we breathe with our friend. And just becoming aware of what that's like, experience of being with our friend, and any glimmer of response in the heart center, in the belly. And now, in the third stage, bring into mind the neutral person. They too, like us, are breathing in this moment. See if we can tune into that very visceral way in which they are just the same as us. And noticing what that experience is like. Noticing any cooling of our response. We're not judging ourselves for that. Just bringing awareness, discovering what our response actually is. And see if we can approach that in this with openness and curiosity. And noticing if it changes as we continue to attend to the heart center. Noticing anything that you're learning. Perhaps about why you experience this person in this way or respond to this person in this way. No need to rush to an answer. Learning often comes slowly. See if we can allow this slow discovery that is the metta bhavana. And now, as we move into the fourth stage, bringing to mind the difficult person. Always attending to the heart center and the belly and all the belly. And really noticing what happens in our experience as we come into visceral awareness of this person. And seeing if we can bring a kindly, curious, open attitude to what we learn. The fourth stage is the great test. Focuses the mind. So really acknowledging the courage, sort of quiet courage of what you're doing. And now that we've got a vivid sense of ourselves, a good friend, the neutral person and the difficult person, in the fifth stage, bringing them all to mind, we'll have a slightly longer fifth stage than normal. So again, getting a vivid sense. I tend to see my friend on my left, my enemy on my right, facing each other. A neutral person in front of me. So just breathing with those people, getting a visceral sense of their presence as they breathe. Which is what they're doing right now. So let's notice any difference of response. So particularly between our good friend and the difficult person. Just moving between those and noticing how there's a difference of response. And noticing the difference in how they feel. So we're capable of these two different responses. At the same time, our friend sometimes becomes our enemy, is in the fourth stage. Sometimes enemies become friends. And then seeing what you can learn about how the more limited response to your enemy, if that's what's there, actually feels. How does the mental state itself of relating to someone in this way feel? Really exploring that with real honesty. Don't worry if not much comes, that's fine. This isn't the work of a day. Just having the courage to look more honestly at your experience. And then what does the sort of communication dynamic that manifests as a consequence of how you're relating, what does that feel like? And then seeing if that helps to just move your interest in relating to that person that way. And even asking, is this what I really want? Asking that very honestly. Because this is the inner experience of your life. Not all the time, but sometimes. With this person. And then broadening out again to the friend. Seeing if that can encourage us to a more even, a more universal response. And then more briefly doing this with the neutral person. Neutral because they don't have any bearing on our desires. And seeing if we can reach out to them with this response that's not about our desires and getting life to conform to them. And then similarly ourselves, just like the neutral person. We too are breathing, human. We can wish ourselves well beyond our desires of how we would like ourselves to be in that sort of narrow way. So don't worry if this is all not quite working. It's the effort that is important in the practice. Sometimes the fruits come later. And then we can extend our awareness out. We can extend this heart of metta, or perhaps sort of glimmer of a slightly more even response to more people. including them in this glowing awareness, glowing with kindness or friendliness or glimmering. A glimmer is enough. And if there is something of a glimmer there, just really experiencing what that's like, dwelling in it. In these last few moments of the practice. And as we come towards the end, just dropping any effort that you're making and just sitting, absorbing the momentum of the practice as it emerges into your mind, into your experience. Even if it's not very dramatic, just honoring your efforts by doing nothing for a moment. And as I ring a bell, bringing the meditation to a close, starting to become aware of the room around you. And when you're ready, opening your eyes to become mindful of a visual sense. So giving yourself a bit of time just to adjust out of the meditation. So we've got a little bit of time just to see if there are any questions that are coming up or anything that you wanted to comment on that happened in your practice. So do, if you have, do enter those in the chat box. Really helpful to hear how you got on, and to have your questions helps everybody who's here just sort of reflect further on this area.
I was just noticing in that one that my desire to be right and not to be wrong is stronger than my sense of anything else.
Oh, yeah.
Which is just really, I mean, it's not comfortable to notice that, but I suppose that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Yep. And you are able to sort of notice that, and even with the discomfort. Sorry, did everyone hear that? Probably people will have heard that. Yeah, they will have heard it. Yeah, you're able to just sort of sit there with the discomfort of that, allow it into awareness.
Yes, but then I did decide that my desire for people to be happy was strong. So it was like a conflict of like my actual feeling was like, I don't want to be wrong. So I don't think I can change how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, well, it's kind of like alongside it, there's another thing going on that is, but that's not the sum of my experience.
Yeah,
I don't want to behave in ways that are going to cause other people harm.
Yeah,
So those two things don't add up. But it was like, well, they're just sort of both there.
Yeah, yeah.
But it doesn't, it's kind of one of those things that doesn't make sense. So my head doesn't know what to do with it.
Yeah. No, thanks, Liz. Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? How somehow when we become more aware of our habits that are completely contrary to what, our sort of aspirations, we become more aware of them, somehow become closer to our aspirations too. We sort of allow the possibility of those to emerge. It's almost like we sort of cover them over by not being aware of our, of the first approach, sort of arranging life to conform with our desires. As long as we sort of aren't aware of it, we sort of obscure the possibility of metta. Great, thanks, Liz. Yeah.
There's nothing else coming through in the chat box.
No, it's not. Great.
There was a comment someone was saying the other day about on this retreat that was talking about letting go and sort of like letting go of one idea and we're just letting go into something different. And they made the comment that you have to let go into something else. So it's not just all about sort of giving up or deciding that you're not going to be a consumer or you're going to stop eating meat or whatever the thing is that you're letting go of. And I just thought that was really helpful to hear, that you are letting go into something bigger, something more beautiful, something, I don't know, different. That it's not just it's not like a lack. I suppose a lot of the time we feel like we're lacking something, so we need more. Whereas this is like counterintuitive, that you're letting go of stuff, but actually by doing that, you gain.
No, that's very relevant. I think that's why we need to sort of explore our experience more honestly. It's like we're carrying on with this idea of what our experience is and how things are going to work out. But actually, there's much deeper things going on with us, and it's only if we sort of step off that all too familiar territory, i.e., let go of the so familiar story, and become more fully aware of our experience. It takes a sort of a leap of faith, a leap of courage, really, to believe there may be metta down there. It's a good point.
Well, either everybody's still meditating or they've got no questions.
Right.
Or maybe we're off air and we just don't know about it. But anyway, there's no comments coming through.
Great. Okay, brilliant. Well, before we sign off, there's one comment.
We've got one there. Alan says, thank you for the meditation. Could you give some pointers to what is the concept of metta?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, there's lots to say about that. You might want to go to one of our videos on the channel, which is introducing the metta bhavana. But yeah, metta is it's a response of well-wishing that isn't confined in any way, limited anyway to limited anyway, basically to a particular number of people to ourselves. So it's this kind of reaching out, this response of life to life, if you see what I mean. So just a sort of response of solidarity, resonating with other people, simply because they are other people. So there's lots you could say in answer to that, but it gives you a sort of start with what metta means. Great. Well, we're just coming towards the end of our class, our time, meditation night, and so just to let you know that we've got our course coming up, the Journey and the Guide. So that course is actually going to run over Saturday mornings and Thursday night. The sort of meditational application will be explored on Thursday nights, starting on the 20th, so not next week, but the week after. Vidyasaki and Samudra Ghosh are going to be leading that. But you may well want to sign up for the whole course, i.e. the Saturday morning element to it. The Thursday night is going to be open. Saturday morning is going to be on Zoom, so you'll need to sign up for it on our website. And what the course is about is it's a very, very sort of practical course in what are all the sort of elements that you need to bring into play in order to have a full human life. I mean full in the sense of sometimes you call it spiritual. I just say it's sort of fully human life. So that's what the course is really about. Looking at these kind of essential 5 aspects that you need in play for a fully human life. The book has a little strapline across it saying a practical guide to enlightenment. So that's kind of what it is. It's a great course, actually. It's a really, really brilliant course. So you may well want to sign up for that. But before that, next week, myself, I'll be away. In fact, I'll be away for 3 weeks. I'm off on solitary retreat. Very fortunate to be getting on a retreat finally. And Vidyasaki will be away actually next week as well. But by Matti, who you may or may not have met, but who works here at the centre, will be taking the class. Will be at meditation night here with Liz, and he'll be doing the mindfulness of breathing. So lastly, to mention what we call dana, which is the Buddhist word for generosity. So that's the basis on which sort of the culture that we're trying to bring into being, culture we're trying to live through, and bring into being, invite into being in the Buddhist centre and through all our activities. So really, we want to give and are giving these classes sort of freely giving them. We put quite a lot of work into them because we feel it's really, really important. So they're all freely given, and that's what we want to invite you into by way of relationship. We know that's the best way to be able to teach practices is within that sort of context, rather than a sort of exchange kind of mode. So we'll invite you to participate, to join us on that basis. So I think Liz has just sort of added the link in the chat box for where you can go to give a donation if you want to give £3 to £5. You might want to give more. You might not be able to, might not want to. That's all fine because we'd like you to give it freely too, as we give freely. Yep. I'll also mention standing orders. Many people take out standing orders, actually. So you may want to do that. That really helps us as a centre, because we can plan on the basis of that. Without that, we can't plan, and centres need to plan. Anyway, we've come to the end of the class. So thanks all for coming here to Meditation Night, and we'll see you again soon.